Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I got this email from Darwin Mitchell that says, "Thank you for all you do. Was wondering if you saw the news about the new prophetess for the community of Christ. Was surprised." And yeah, that did surprise me, but it didn't at the same time. The reason why is because I've been following a little bit the community of Christ since I started this channel. In fact, I had this very unusual opportunity to interview the former president of the Council of the 12 Apostles of the Community of Christ, Linda L. Booth. I'll leave the link for this interview in the description below in case you want to check it out. I would encourage that you check it out because it was really interesting and I learned a lot about what they currently believe and don't believe. And it seems like they've really departed from their original beliefs from what I can tell. And it was very interesting. Now, I got set up with Linda L. Booth through Joni, the Joyous Genealogist channel. Make sure to check her out. In fact, I just hung out with her back in September when we went up to Kansas City and went to the, the visitor center, went to the temple lot and saw the Community of Christ sites as well. They're not the ones that have the temple. Let me just explain really quick. So you have the, in case you don't know, maybe you're a new convert or I don't know. Just like the rest of Christianity, how Christianity is divided up into all these different denominations, a lot of them being branched off of the Catholic Church. Our church also has these branches or these, offshoots. And the biggest one is the Community of Christ with 250,000 people. So they're not very big at all, especially compared to our church. 250,000 people. But they have this spiral temple in Independence, Missouri. We know that this is where the 24 temple complex is going to be built. So this is the center place. This is where New Jerusalem is going to be built. And if you look at the place markers, I should have made these maybe a little bit bigger, but the ones in white represent buildings and property that we own, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you have the Independence Visitor Center, built to become one of the temples of the 24 temple complex. And then we have a stake center over here to the east. And then to the north and to the west, you have the Community of Christ, the Spiral Temple. This is like their headquarters for their church. And then the auditorium, which is basically their conference center. They also have the stone, I can't remember, I think they call it the Stone Church. But then this little guy right here with the pink place marker, this is the Church of Christ Temple Lot. It's an even smaller church of about 5,000 people. And they own the piece of land where the first of the 24 temples would have been built. This would have been like the chief temple, the primary temple. And they've actually attempted to build it in the past, but it didn't work out. And so it just remains like this, just an empty lot. But you can see the outline of where the temple would have been built right here. Okay. They have the cornerstones and everything. In fact, you can go inside here, and me and Jenica and Joni, we went in here and they have like this little tiny kind of like visitor center room in here that has like some of the history of the temple lot, and that was kind of neat. Okay, so we're talking about this church though, the Community of Christ, which they also own land where the other additional temples would be. There would be temples over here on this side. There would be temples over here, like 12 over here on a block, and then 12 over here on a block. And someday it will include the visitor center whenever it's renovated. Okay. So, and by the way, thank you, Joni, for setting me up with Linda to interview her and for everything that you do. So before we get into this story, oh, and by the way, they're the ones that own the Kirtland Temple. And that's one big reason why I'm really interested in the Community of Christ, because I want to see, is the day going to come, and I'm sure it will, when we are able to get the Kirtland Temple back by purchasing it from them. And there's reason to believe that we will. So we're going to look at this story about the new prophetess. We're also going to look at the financials, the most up-to-date financials for the community of Christ, because that's where we find out if they're potentially going to sell the Kirtland Temple along with other historic assets. And then we're also going to kind of look at some of the offshoots from the community of Christ, because they themselves have offshoots. Okay, so it's going to be a very interesting episode. Before we get into it, here's the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge, where we're sharing the Book of Mormon. We've shared 7,764 copies of the Book of Mormon, and there's 853 people that have joined. We're trying to get to 10,000 copies shared and 1,000 people that have joined. We're making good progress. And I haven't updated this since yesterday, but in case you missed it, there was one person that got baptized, which is amazing and great. And then 3 people that have met with the missionaries. So that's a pretty big update. That brings us to 1 baptism for the month of January and 4 reports of people meeting with the missionaries. And then for the year, 3 baptisms and then 13 contacts with the missionaries. So you guys are doing a really good job. Just share the Book of Mormon, give that person the chance to come across the church and the gospel, and let the Lord do the rest. But do your part if follow-up is needed. But good job, everybody. Okay, so let's first cover this article from the Salt Lake Tribune. For the first time, a woman will lead a church that traces back to Joseph Smith. Community of Christ calls its first female president prophet. That's what they call, this is like the title for them, president prophet, 40 years after opening ordination to women. Okay. For the first time in its history, the community, the Community of Christ, formerly known as the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or RLDS, that's how I always knew them growing up, has appointed a woman to lead the global faith of 250,000 members, headquartered in Independence, Missouri. Her name is Stacy D. Cram. Now, when you go to the Community of Christ's website, they have this World Church Leadership Council, and you can kind of see how things are set up. Now she's not, my understanding is that she's going to have to wait until the World Conference, I think this year, and she has to be like voted in. I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't seem like she's officially the president yet, but she will be the president prophet. Currently, it's Stephen M. Veazey. And then you have the 2 counselors, K. Scott Murphy and Stacy, I'm sure it's Stacy D. Cram. Now, I could have sworn that one of the last times that I came here, she was actually the presiding bishop, as recently as within like the last 2 years. I don't know. This is just my memory, but presiding bishop Ronald D. Harmon Jr., and then you have his counselors, and then you have their apostles, and then there's more leadership positions down here. Okay, so this is their makeup. If you go into the history of the president prophet, or prophet president as it shows it here on Wikipedia, according to them, Joseph Smith would have been the first, and then after that there's a period of time where famously the church didn't know what to do after he was martyred. From that came a couple different offshoots, again, the biggest of which was the RLDS church, which in more recent times changed its name to Community of Christ. And that was led by Joseph Smith III, the son of Emma and Joseph Smith. And sorry, I always like double guess myself. Yeah, it says right there, Emma Hale Smith. So Joseph and Emma's son, Joseph Smith III, was the one that became the prophet president. How do they put it here? Gosh dang it. Sorry, I'm messing up all over the place. I don't know. Okay, we'll just go with whatever the site that we're on says. So he was the first prophet president after Joseph Smith. And then after that, Frederick M. Smith, Israel A. Smith, W. Wallace Smith, Wallace B. Smith. And then It looks like in 2004, right? That's the end of term ordination. Then in 1996, then it changes to somebody that's not a Smith. It's W. Grant McMurray, and then after that, Stephen M. Vesey. And now, the next entry is going to be Stacy Cram. Okay, so they haven't had as many prophet presidents as us. President Nelson is the 17th president of the church, but as of right now, they only have 8, and then Stacy will be the 9th. Okay, let's move on. Raised in Illinois and known for her one-word slogan, "Onward," Cram was set apart as a priest in 1987, 3 years after the Community of Christ began ordaining women, a step the LDS Church has not taken. Since then, she has overseen the organization's finances and properties as the presiding bishop. So here we know for a fact that she was the presiding bishop, but I think it was as recently as within the last 2 years that she was. Served as the dean of the church's graduate seminary program, and traveled the world offering sermons as a member of the Council of 12 Apostles. Okay, so priest, presiding bishop, dean of that seminary, and then she was an apostle for a certain amount of time. And most recently, it seems like counselor to the president, according to the church, their church's website. Unlike the Utah-based church, the Community of Christ does not simply promote the most senior apostle to the position of president prophet. Instead, presidents historically have handpicked their successors, which until the 1990s sprang from direct descendants of Joseph Smith. And we just saw that just a second ago. That changed with the 2005 appointment of the current prophet president, Stephen M. Vesey, whose selection represented a joint decision by the Council of the 12 Apostles and the First Presidency. After a major health crisis limited Vesey's ability to fulfill his calling, the faith's apostles and prophets, unlike those in the LDS Church, do not serve for life. And that's the case, as you can see, with Linda L. Booth. She was the former president of the Council of the 12 Apostles, but she retired. And so there's an example of that. The current leadership followed this same process to land on Cram's name. So it seems that for these last two, for Stephen M. Vesey and then Cram, instead of doing the one person hand-picked successor, the way it's been done, all these other times, there was input from the Council of the 12 and the First Presidency with these most recent two. Delegates to the 2025 World Conference from May 30th to June 6th will vote on her appointment. Oh, okay, so it's not going to be until 2025. Sorry, I forget some of the details in these articles, which Howlett and McKay expect to win swift approval. Cram, McKay said, has her work cut out for her. Christianity in the Northern Hemisphere faces, he said, very strong headwinds, pointing toward recent studies revealing a decreased appetite for organized religion in the United States. Quote, the church in the global South is growing, but of course, the funding for that growth has come from basically North America, McKay explained. And then he continues, balancing supporting the growth of the church in the South with the needs of an aging church in North America will not be easy. Yeah, and we're going to go into more detail about that because it comes down to tithing, and the situation over there does not seem to be good. So on their website, they have these financial updates, and we've already covered a number of these, but now we have the most recent one, the December 2023 financial update. And here it is right here. Now, what I did is I copied and pasted the text onto a separate document because since this is a PDF file, I can't use my Google Chrome extension to highlight so I can remember which parts I want to read. So I'll leave the link for this in the description below, but just know that I'm going to read from what I copied and pasted so I could do the highlights. Okay, now this is a lot of what I'm interested in just because I'm excited at the possibility that they may sell the Kirtland Temple. Not that I want the downfall of their church or any, I don't have any, ill intentions for them, but it would be nice to have the Kirtland Temple back. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the Kirtland Temple being purchased back and then renovated and then put into operation? Now, it's not clear if that actually would take place because the Kirtland Temple didn't have ordinance rooms. It didn't have like a baptistry, but it'd be really interesting to see what the church would do with it. Would they recommission it? And if so, would they keep it the same as it is now? Or what would they do? The one thing about it is that it's a temple. It's at least significant to us and to the community of Christ. I don't know if like other offshoots view it with any significance. So I don't know if like the church would kind of keep the status quo and keep it as like a historic site that people can come, almost like a museum. So there's I have a lot of questions about what would happen in that kind of scenario. But anyway, it would just be nice to own it again. All right, so let's go ahead and read through some of this. Financial update, December 2023. 1. Giving Tuesday. And 2023 update, Giving Tuesday, was amazing thanks to the generosity of members and friends who shared just over $707,000, including $315,000 in matching funds. This will help close an approximate $1 million shortfall in worldwide mission tithes contributions as of the 15th of November. So already not starting off very well because it looks like they expected $1 million more in tithing, but it didn't come in. All right, continuing. While contributions are down by 12% year to date, expenses are also down by approximately the same amount. We are grateful for the good work of budget managers to balance mission support needs with changing financial realities. Although we anticipate a deficit of up to $500,000 in 2023, budget surpluses from the 2021 and 2022 operating budgets are available to cover this deficit. Okay, so in the first place, they expected $1 million more to come in from tithing, but it didn't come. And then it seems that they had some kind of event called Giving Tuesday, in which they were able to raise some money. But even with that, overall, for 2023, there was a deficit of $500,000. So that's not good. And what they're doing to take care of that is they're pulling from surplus money from 2021 and 2022, which is usually not the position that you want to be in. I know with my, personal finances, I don't like to borrow from any month, whether it be in the future, that's like the worst case scenario, or from the past. You want just like a month to be self-sufficient, and in this case, for this entire organization, the year to be self-sufficient, and ideally to generate a surplus, but hopefully not a surplus that you have to use for shortfalls in the future, a surplus that you can use for expansion or purchasing things that you've wanted to purchase for the organization, things like that. So that's not good. Okay, moving on. 2024 worldwide mission budget approved. The World Church Finance Board met on the 2nd of December to consider and approve the 2024 worldwide mission budget. This included discussions of strategies to address declining worldwide mission tithes income, addressed in the next section of this report. The approved budget is the last year of a 4-year plan developed to provide a level of consistency in mission support services and ministries to the fields of the church. A copy of the budget can be found online and then they give the email or the website After a significant discussion, the board approved budgeted income of $14,032,000 and expenses of $15,460,000. The projected deficit of $1,428,000 will be covered by the carryover surplus from 2021 and 2022 budget years. So it's the same story as last year. There's another deficit. They're carrying over surplus from the same years, 2021 and 2022. And, they're not, I guess, projecting to, I guess this might be their like worst case scenario. They're like, okay, this is what we're planning on. We'll be okay. If our expenses are $15,460,000 because we'll be able to cover that up with surplus from previous years. But maybe they're hoping that more income will come in and then they won't have to use so much from the surplus. So I guess the question is this year going to be better than last year, where last year the deficit was $500,000? Is something going to happen this year that'll bring in more money to where the deficit will end up being less than it was last year? Or is this worst case scenario going to come to fruition? I guess we'll have to wait and see. 2024 and beyond. Although the projected 2024 budget deficit is covered by surpluses generated in earlier years, it is symptomatic of a larger problem. Okay, so maybe not. I guess, okay. As shared in the June 2023 financial update, those older than 50 gave just over 11.2 million, or 90% of the worldwide mission tithes contributed in all nations in 2022. Now, to me, that is astounding. That is shocking, because in our church, in my lifetime, I get the sense that we do pretty good with paying tithes. I don't know what the percentages are, the numbers, but just looking at myself, friends, family, it doesn't seem like there's an issue with people under 50 paying tithing, generally speaking. But to be in a situation, could you imagine if in our church, it was mostly only, or it was like pretty much only the 50-year-olds and older that are paying tithing, but those younger are not? That would be a big problem. And of course, this is a big problem for them. I guess it's not surprising, because if you look at the current religious landscape, there's an issue worldwide where people are becoming more and more secular, less and less religious, including people that are, technically in a church, but they're probably taking it less seriously. It's like these younger generations are kind of stepping away from tradition and from holding on firmly to the same beliefs that their predecessors did. And so it seems like it's just like an overall throughout the world problem. I'm not sure about like tithing, but it doesn't surprise me for that reason that the community of Christ is having this issue. And on top of that, when I was talking to Linda, she's a very nice lady. But the overall sense that I got from her is that the community of Christ is kind of just like a shadow of what it once was. Like their beliefs have become become very like generic, whereas like before it seems like they had some, they had dogmas, they had very specific doctrines. But now it seems like they've kind of gone the way of the world, where it's not so much about doctrines, ordinances, things like that. It's more just kind of like become like a feel good kind of church. Like, just be a good person, be like Christ. He's the peaceful one. They like call him the peaceful one. I've noticed a lot. And, the important thing is to, take care of third world countries and do stuff like that, which that is certainly important. It's important to take care of the poor. That's part of our religion, but that's not all that our religion is. We do have specific beliefs and doctrines and ordinances and such. But for them, it just seems like it's become very washed down from what it once was. And so if you're in a church that just kind of like it has that kind of trend where it's like, the early days of the church, they believe this kind of stuff, but now we're just kind of just be a good person. Um, then why would you pay tithing? If you don't really believe that it's a commandment, you know, like in our church, in order to be temple worthy and to have a temple recommend, you need to be paying a full tithe. You know, it's a very important belief of ours. But if you're in a church where it's just like, oh, it's a good idea, or, we don't really believe so much in commandments, just be a good person, then why would you pay tithing? Especially as, there's inflation and cost of living is going up and it's harder and harder to make it in the world. Why would you do that unless you had those like very solid convictions and belief that that's what the Lord wants you to do? When I was talking to her, she was talking about her children and how they're kind of like stepping away from, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure she said this, that they're kind of like stepping away from organized religion. They're starting to kind of like question whether they even need to go to church. And there was like a book that she was talking about that has to do that, talks about this phenomena of people stepping away from traditional denominations and churches and just kind of living religion privately, non-denominational or just yourself. And she didn't seem to have a problem with that. In fact, she seemed to, just my read is, it seemed like she thought that was like a cool idea. Like that's like, it's really neat how this is happening. So I don't know that she represents the rest of the leadership of the community of Christ, but if that's like how they are, then it's kind of like they're just dwindling into nothing, because it seems like they're like taking their beliefs less and less seriously, and it's all becoming diluted into just kind of meaninglessness. You go to their website and they have, it seems like they have a lot of emphasis on giving to the poor, taking care of people in third world nations, and then climate change. So it also feels like they're just kind of going the way of the world in the philosophies of the world. So I'm not sure that they're going to turn this ship around when it comes to tithing by going that route. Okay. As our contributors grow older, we will continue to see a gradual decline in worldwide mission tithes. This chart illustrates actual worldwide mission tithes contributions through 2022 and projected contributions into the future. So that's referring to this chart in the PDF. And the blue numbers start in 2023. These are the projections. And as you can see, there's a downward trend in worldwide mission tithes. That's not good. You need tithes in order to stay in operation. Of course, there's other sources of income, but I would think that for any given church, tithes would be the main source of income. I don't know. Okay. As worldwide mission tithes are anticipated to decline in future years and expenses increase, we're facing the possibility of significant budget reductions. These reductions would include staff reductions and would significantly impact our capacity to provide current services and ministries to church at international headquarters and throughout the field. Reductions in the last decade have resulted in inadequate staffing levels to support current and future needs. Now look at this. We are beyond the ability to trim back expenses. So there's nothing else that they can cut out from the budget as far as expenses go. They're like at rock bottom when it comes to that. Entire groups of support services and ministries would have to be eliminated. If we are to avoid these types of significant budget reductions, we must fill the increasing gap with alternate income, such as engaging new generations of disciples in our mission, including opportunities to respond through whole life stewardship. These new disciples will help replace the loss of income from those faithful contributors who are no longer with us. This strategy will take multiple years to substantiatively affect income. I don't know what that means. Engage new generations in whole life membership. I don't know if that means like just re-emphasizing the importance of paying tithing. I don't know. How do you understand that? Put it in the comments below. Okay, B, exploring and implementing new sources of income to build endowments and sustain our global mission. This will include an evaluation of how to best utilize all our assets to support our vision and mission. So we're getting to the part, pretty soon we're getting to the part where they talk about the sale of land and buildings. And that's the part that I'm most interested in. It will also include new funding models and approaches to attract funding to various aspects of our mission that have appeal beyond our current circle of members and friends. All right, I'm just going to skip down. In the event new income sources are not realized in 2024, we will need to implement significant budget reductions for 2025. So they're playing around with some ideas of, okay, what do we do to generate more income? So you have these different priorities. So priority number 1, tier 1 strategic priorities. Tier 1 priorities focus initially on the United States due to the proportion of contributions, 95%, that come from this source. Now, I don't know how many of their members live outside the United States, but either way, 95% coming from the United States, that sounds probably disproportionate. They go on to talk about encouraging the paying of tithing in the following groups: the Children's Generosity Formation and Giving Portal, and then re-engagement with individuals ages 25 to 45, deeper engagement in individuals ages 45 to 65. And yeah, so trying to get those age groups, I guess they have like a different strategy for each age group to try and get them to pay tithing and contribute. Priority number 2, explore and implement new sources of income to build endowments and sustain focused support of our global mission. We will continue to evaluate how we utilize all assets while exploring and implementing new sources of income. This will include new funding models and creative approaches to attract funding to various aspects of our mission that have appealed beyond traditional forms of organized religion. So there's that phrase again, organized religion. I feel like it's concerning if your church starts using a phrase like that, because the implication is like that there's an alternative to organized religion. It's almost like you're kind of like starting to agree with the adversary, or you're starting to use their language. You don't want to see that in your own verbiage. I don't think. That's my opinion. We will also explore entrepreneurial opportunities, and then exploration and implementation of new net revenue generating entities. The priority is revenue diversification by identifying and potentially investing in entities that embody our values and provide predictable net revenue to fund mission over time. So it sounds like possibly investments. I don't know if that would be like stock, like the stock market or other things. So they're playing around with some business ideas and investments. Okay, now this is the part that I'm most focused on. Priority number 4, increase effective utilization of all our facilities, including International Headquarters Campus, for mission. Stewardship of our physical assets requires effective use of facilities for mission across the church, including the temple complex. We will support ways to expand utilization of the temple and auditorium as a center for community life, formation, and mission. In the future, we will continue to evaluate the best use of all physical assets to support mission. In some cases, now this is the key part right here, and they've talked about this in the past, the sale of historic assets. They don't use the term historic assets here, but they say in some cases, this evaluation will lead to the conversion of physical assets, such as buildings and property, to liquid assets, which basically means cash, selling buildings and property for cash. And then maybe, putting that cash in like a money market or some other kind of account, but essentially cash, turning buildings into cash. So those funds can be used for new mission opportunities locally and globally into the future. Now they do make some money from the Kirtland Temple through tours. The question is, and there was one time that we were looking at their financials and it showed how much they made. But I guess the question is it really worth it to keep the Kirtland Temple rather than just sell it? Because I'm sure that our church would pay a pretty penny to get the temple back. And maybe that can help in the short term with some of these issues that they're having, or maybe in the long term, depending on how much they pay. I don't know how much the church would be willing to pay for it, but I mean, this is just like a rough, estimate based on nothing. But I'd imagine that they'd pay in the tens of millions of dollars. Think what they could do with, $30 million or $40 million. That would help them over the next few years at least. I guess the question is, how much would they sell it for, and how much would the church be willing to pay to get the Kirtland Temple? But don't you think that's pretty reasonable, like in the tens of millions of dollars? I wonder if okay, I'm just thinking of this right now. How much do LDS temples cost? Look at that. This is Wall Street Journal. The temple cost $69 million to construct. I don't know what temple they're talking about. Here's another one from MormonR.org. How much does a temple cost to build? It is estimated that they cost between $7 million and $70 million. LDS Church Growth Blogspot. They say that they saw floated 70 million. Here's one that says 69 million. So holy cow. Would it be that big of a deal for the church to pay 70 million for the Kirtland Temple? Or even more? What if the church was willing to do like 100 million just because it's the Kirtland Temple and we really want it? Or 150 million because this is not just an ordinary temple. it'd be like getting one historic temple for the price of two, three, four. I would think that that'd be worth it. So the community of Christ could. Are you guys listening? Are any of you listening to me? sell the Kirtland Temple for I don't know, for $200 million. Just sell it for $200 million. That's going to take care of you for a while. It really will, based on what I'm seeing from your financial documents and stuff. If I were them, I would find that very appealing. They don't really use it. When I was talking to Linda, we were talking about temples and how they view temples. And of course, they don't use temples for ordinances like we do. I like asked her what the purpose was, and she gave like a kind of ambiguous answer to that, where the temple is just kind of like a beacon, like a spiritual beacon, but she didn't seem to give it more significance than that. So it's not like us if we were to like sell a temple, and we it'd be a hard thing for us, because like that's where the work of salvation is done, and it's sacred. It's the house of the Lord. Like, we literally believe that. And we believe that Christ has been to various temples. He's probably been to all the temples. It's actually the house of the Lord, literally. And so it would be a much harder thing for us to sell off a temple. But for them, it's just like a spiritual beacon. They don't even give it the same importance at all that we do. So it's not like I don't think they'd be too heartbroken about selling it. Now, I don't know. I guess I need to talk to more people from that church, but the ones that would care about it, they've already left. Like when the Community of Christ, when they went from RLDS to Community of Christ, I think the ones that were really held fast to those original beliefs, they left. The ones that were like more serious about their unique doctrines, they left. So we will just have to see what happens. Now, speaking of offshoots from their church, it's interesting because somebody in the comments was like, hey, is this true? This is huge if it's true. General Conference in Independence, Missouri, April 7th to 13th. Is this true? And so I looked it up, and no, it's not true. Not for our church. There is this, I don't even know if you would call it a denomination. It seems like it's like a loose confederation of like congregations that used to be part of the RLDS, but they fell away and became their own thing once the Community of Christ made its changes. So you have the Joint Conference of Restoration Branches, or JCRB. So to understand this, you have to understand, okay, you have this Wikipedia page that, excuse me, that lists all these different denominations or offshoots from the Joseph Smith Restoration Movement, right? Here's like a chart that depicts all the different branches and stuff like that. Again, the biggest one is the Community of Christ. And there's a section down here that talks about that branch. And so it has them listed first, 250,000, and then you have all these other ones that broke off. Now, it's hard to tell, but if you look at some of these numbers that are here on Wikipedia, I think the largest offshoot from the Community of Christ is this, the Independent RLDS Restoration Branches. We'll come back to this in just a minute. Let's go to the Community of Christ Wikipedia page, and I want to read this portion so you can kind of understand what happened. This what led to this like schism within the church. changes in beliefs and practices. During the 20th century, the then reorganized church underwent what some scholars termed an RLDS reformation, in which the denomination's leadership pivoted toward mainline Protestant religious thought. Since the 1960s, the church's proselytizing outside North America have caused a reassessment and gradual evolution in its traditional practices and beliefs. Which that I don't quite understand that. So like you sent missionaries outside of North America, and then the missionaries come back and they're like, you know what? We should be the ones that change. Or like the new converts are like, you know what? You're the ones that need to change. That's kind of like reverse of what is supposed to happen. A revelation presented by Wallace B. Smith. Okay, Wallace B. Smith. Let's just look up who that was. He was the last Smith as a prophet president. He was the last one. Ordained in 1978. Okay, it's with him that things fell apart. A revelation presented by Wallace B. Smith in 1984 decreed the construction of the Independence Temple and the ordination of women to the priesthood, after long-standing calls for both. Following the retirement of Smith as prophet president of the church, W. Grant McMurray was appointed as the new president. Although McMurray had been designated prophet president by Smith, some members objected because he was the first church president who was not a direct descendant of Joseph Smith, which they considered to be a distinguishing trait from other denominations of the Latter-day Saint movement. These changes, among others, were controversial among the membership, and they led to the formation of breakaway churches, such as the Remnant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I have them up right here. And this is just like a tiny little congregation. Let me just remind myself how big they are. Let's see. Sorry, I'll find it really quick. Remnant, right here. Only 1,000 to 2,000 members. The Remnant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 1,000 to 2,000 members. So they basically just went it alone, and so did a bunch of these other breakaways. In 1994, former church historian Richard P. Howard estimated that 25,000 members had left to join such groups. Between the mid-1960s and the late 1990s, there was a 1/3 decline. That is significant. From the 60s to the late 90s, there was a 1/3 decline in new baptisms in the United States, along with a 50% drop in contributions. 50% drop in tithing in the decade before 1998. Sorry. The decline in membership was offset somewhat by an increase in converts outside the United States. Growth continues to be driven by missions outside the U.S., particularly in the developing world and in Australia. In recent years, the church has attracted many ex-Mormons. The vision and mission statements of the Community of Christ were adopted in 1996 by the leading quorums of the church's leadership and reflect the peace and justice, right? That's one of those buzzwords nowadays, justice, right? Social justice, reflect the peace and justice centered ministries of the denomination. In its mission statement, the church declares that quote, we proclaim Jesus Christ and promote communities of joy, hope, love, and peace. The vision statement states that, quote, we will become a worldwide church dedicated to the pursuit of peace, reconciliation, and healing of the spirit. So just, I mean, not really a mention of Christ being the savior, the redeemer of mankind, or anything like that. That's like another notable feature I've noticed. So there were different things, no longer having a Smith as a prophet, the ordination of women to the priesthood. Um, and then it seems, even though it's not really mentioned here, it seems like a watering down of some of those original beliefs, like not taking them as seriously. Um, Also, the creation of the temple, which my understanding, well, I think it says it on this right here. There were people that think that that was not supposed to happen yet, that the temple was not supposed to be constructed. And so there were people that disagreed with that. So yeah, this is not our church. This is the Restoration branches. And there is a website for the Conference of Restoration Branches. It seems like I said, they're a loose confederation of branches, not so much centralized, although they do have apostles. I don't know. Here's another one, another part of the page about us. The purpose of the Conference of Restoration Branches is to bring people into a covenant with the Father through Jesus Christ. We exist to spread the restored gospel of Christ, to assist in the gathering of the house of Israel, and to establish Zion, a city of righteousness, the New Jerusalem. So you can see they kind of take that notion much more seriously. So let's go to this. Okay, so here's like some of the different branches. This one no longer exists. Church of the Christian Brotherhood. Split with the RLDS Church due to their denial that Joseph Smith practiced plural marriage. Evans published a book documenting evidence that Smith was a polygamist, then went on to reject most of the tenets of Mormonism. The next one is Church of Jesus Christ Restored. Fundamentalist church that split from the RLDS Church and instituted polygamy and the United Order, has about 40 members. So they are still around. They're headquartered in Ontario, Canada, 40 members, and their thing is polygamy and the United Order. So it seems like these first two, which is very strange to think of a church splitting or an offshoot from the RLDS Church because of polygamy, because I usually, in my mind, I associate that with offshoots from our church, the main church. Okay, next one, Church of Jesus Christ, or Tonyites. They're headquartered in Independence, Missouri. Left RLDS Church in 1980. Claimed to be Elijah and only prophet of his organization. Okay. Independence RLDS, Restoration branches. So the number for this is between 15 to 30,000 sympathizers who yet retain membership in the community of Christ as of 2011, and about 10,000 members, I guess, total that are actually in these branches, attending several hundred distinct congregations. Okay, so yeah, so just like it says, so you have about 10,000 that are in these branches, and then 15 to 30,000 sympathizers, but they're still clinging on to the community of Christ. Affiliated branches and study groups, with each branch relatively autonomous and the movement as a whole centered in Independence, Missouri. RLDS church branches that became independent of the RLDS church individually through the 1980s due to the opposition to changes in church doctrines and practices. Most priesthood holders of these branches soon became affiliated with the Conference of Restoration Elders. And I think that's what we're looking at right here. Conference of Restoration Branches. At a 3-day conference in November 2005, the Joint Conference of Restoration Branches was formed, which had 6,000 to 7,000 members as of 2010. Members consider themselves members of the historical RLDS Church, in a direct line of succession from those who dissented following doctrinal changes roughly coinciding with the church's name change to Community of Christ. So it seems to me that like the actual remnants of the RLDS Church, the church that really took itself seriously and their distinct doctrines seriously, they have now been reduced to just about 7,000 to 10,000 members. And they're a loose confederation of autonomous branches that are all part of this conference of restoration branches. That's what became of those who held true to the RLDS doctrines, mostly anyway. Next one, Church of Jesus Christ Restored, 1830, regards Wallace B. Smith as a fallen prophet. So again, he was the last Smith prophet president. So they regard him as a fallen prophet of the RLDS Church for his opening the priesthood to women and for choosing to build the Independence Temple as opposed to the city of Zion. So they I guess they were like, no, the city needs to be built first and then we can build the temple. I guess that's what it sounds like to me. Church of Christ, 1985, also known as Lion of God Ministry. Clark broke from the RLDS Church in November 1985. In May 1987, Clark began to issue a newsletter, The Return. Group adheres closely to the King James Version of the Bible and the Record of the Nephites, or the Book of Mormon, but does not consider other Mormon scripture to be authoritative. They keep annual feasts, including Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, etc. And then Church of Jesus Christ Zion's Branch, largely composed of former members of the RLDS Church who oppose what they consider to be recent doctrinal innovations, especially the giving of the priesthood to women in 1984. So these ones in red, I have them in red because that was like something that they all shared, was the opposition to women receiving the priesthood. And then we just have a few more. The Lundgren Group. The denomination broke off from the RLDS Church when Lundgren was dismissed from the church in October 10th, 1988. Lundgren was executed by the state of Ohio on October 24th, 2006 for the murder of Dennis Avery and 4 of his family members. Okay, well, that's maybe not what you want to have as leader of your church. But they're defunct now, but they had 20 followers. Okay, then 2 more. Restoration Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The church broke off from the Community of Christ because of its belief that women should not hold the priesthood. But I don't have a number of how many are a part of that. And then the last one, the one that we were looking at just a little while ago, this website, Remnant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Chiefly composed of former members of the RLDS Church who were part of the independent RLDS restoration branches. So they were part of the restoration branches, but I guess not now. They oppose what they consider to be recent doctrinal innovations, especially the passing of the church presidency to someone not descended from Joseph Smith. Larson is a direct descendant of Smith through his grandson, Frederick Madsen Smith. So they're really clinging on to that idea of a direct descendant of Joseph Smith. Okay. So most of them, it's because of, or one thing that most of them share in common is women receiving the priesthood. Other ones, there's just various reasons. In the early days, polygamy, but yeah, so different reasons, but basically, it was the 80s. It was the 80s that really changed the RLDS Church. Became the Community of Christ. Yeah, these people that reacted to it, and they are very small in number, but they cling to those original beliefs. So that is, that's pretty much it. We're now moving into a new era in the Community of Christ. Their future is very uncertain, which may lead to the sale of the the sale of the Kirtland Temple. I guess we'll see. But this is very interesting news. Yes. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.